It's not a new phenomenon whatsoever, but in 2024 there has been quite a lot of criticism about big teams having a sister team. The most obvious example is the one of Red Bull Racing and Visa Cash App RB, or VCarb, but they're not the only ones. Ferrari and Haas have always had a very close relationship and interchange many parts, although with Haas's new partnership with Toyota, this has lessened a bit. And let's not forget the so-called pink Mercedes, the 2020 Racing Point Challenger that was almost a copy of the 2019 Mercedes. Well, according to Automotor und Sport, the majority of teams now think rules have to be tightened regarding sister teams. In this GPFans Special, we get into that criticism and the potential consequences should the rules change. Before we get into all of that though, if you could quickly subscribe down below and hit the like button, I would personally be very, very thankful. The Formula One Championship has always been about the Constructors' Championship. While all the fame and prestige lies in winning the driver's title, the prize money has always been distributed in the constructor standings. This is probably fair, since that table is a more complete reflection on how much time and effort has been put in by each team. Customer teams have always been allowed, and it has many advantages. For instance, you don't have to build a massive factory, as you can simply buy parts of other teams. There are, however, certain rules about this. As always, the FIA has drafted a set of rules to make sure customer teams don't take things too far. There are the so-called listed team components, a list of components that have to be designed and made by, you guessed it, the team itself. These are the parts that fall under the listed team components: the survival cell and primary roll structure, the front impact structure, all aerodynamic components, plank assembly, the wheel drum and drum deflector, the fuel bladder, the SECU team applications, the primary heat exchangers, and the fuel tank sensor. There are also lists of components that can be taken over from other teams, parts that can be outsourced outside of F1, and standard supply components that are made by the FIA for all teams, like the driver radio, the TV cameras, or the rear lights. Unlike Haas and Ferrari or other customer teams, VCarb really is a sister team of Red Bull, as the sides have the same owners. Mainly Red Bull's direct competitors have been critical of this structure, like McLaren CEO Zak Brown. The American publicly questioned how ethical it is for two teams to have the same owners. He expressed concerns over the health of F1 as a competition, as according to him, a construction like Red Bull and VCarbs wouldn't be allowed in any other sport, as there is a conflict of interest. When Daniel Ricciardo took the fastest lap away from Lando Norris in Singapore in the final lap of the race, there were claims of foul play, as it wasn't Red Bull, but its sister team who snatched away a point from McLaren. All of this brings into question why Red Bull has two F1 teams anyway. After getting themselves on the grid in 2005, Red Bull then bought Minardi the following year as well. Bernie Ecclestone, F1 Supremo at the time, loved the purchase as it secured the medium-term future of Minardi, who were in severe financial trouble under owner Paul Stoddart and operated on a shoestring budget. Ecclestone saw the purchase as Red Bull doing Formula One as a sport a massive favor, preventing a team from disappearing altogether. Zak Brown has been the main canary in the coal mine regarding VCarb and Red Bull, and to his credit, he has not just been saying it during the 2024 season when McLaren are battling Red Bull for titles. Brown thinks there are several regulations to protect smaller teams, like the recent introduction of the cost cap. He then pointed out VCarb often follows its sister team when it comes to voting on decisions, even when it's about decisions that would go against themselves and profit bigger teams like Red Bull. Christian Horner is, however, adamant that Red Bull and VCarb are two different teams. The two teams are totally separate. One is based in Italy. One is based in the UK. The one that is based in Italy has a far larger turnover of staff that end up in Maranello than end up in Milton Keynes. They have different personalities, they have different characters, and they comply continually with the regulations. Indeed, the relationship is far less tight than some of the teams that enjoy very tight relationships with their engine manufacturers. Still, according to Automotor und Sport, the majority of teams want to see changes in the regulations. The plan is to make changes in the rules for 2026, although those plans have not been fleshed out just yet. The idea, though, is that if a sister team or customer team finishes 5th or higher in the Constructors' Championship, that team would have to start building all of its components by itself, within the next 3 years. The components in question are the so-called transferable components, the list of components we mentioned before that you can buy off another team. This includes things like the clutch and rear suspension, which any team who finishes 5th or higher would have to start making themselves. When Haas came into F1 in 2016, about 50% of that first car were Ferrari parts. As a counter-argument, former Haas team principal Günther Steiner argued that if it wasn't for that, Haas wouldn't have been in F1 altogether. So, food for thought. Opinions are split then about whether sister teams should be allowed in F1 then, but the FIA are seemingly going to take some action in the future. But what do you think? Is having a sister team normal, or is it of a different time and should not be allowed anymore? Let us know your opinions in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the very next video. Thank you so much for watching.